Now I would like to introduce Brent Bernie, who was with us last year and gave a very enlightening presentation, and who's with us again this year. He's president of comScore Media Metrix, comScore Canada. In 10 years, comScore has become the global digital measurement tracker in the online and mobile world. comScore is an industry leader in market research, consumer modeling, and innovative information solutions. In other words, they know the modern consumer more than any other organization. Let's welcome Brent Bernie to the stage.
Thank you very much. I was trying to think where I would start from last year, and I think I have a really good idea after listening to the last couple speakers. Just get my clicker here and my water. Last year, I think the core of the message that I gave was, please be aware that things have already changed. If you're thinking about, is this world really happening? Well, yes, it is, and I think that was my message last year. This year, my message, I guess, would be, hey, it's expanding exponentially. Get with the program. It's all around us. When I listened to the first couple of speakers, there are a couple of things I was struck by that really, I think, resonate with me in terms of understanding target markets, whether they be here in Canada or around the world. It's not an important thing. It's almost everything. You really have to be on top of that, and certainly the word measurement, I'll admit my bias. I was happy to hear it mentioned about 3 or 4 times in the first couple of presentations. And it's all about connections as well. Connecting to these people and making sure that the message is relevant to them. Here's what I'm going to try to go through in the time I have with you, 35 minutes or so, who we are, and I'll be brief on that. Give you a good sense of the Canadian landscape that we're all in right now. Talk about video on the second screen. I have the opportunity to share some things with you that we did with the Television Bureau here in Canada. Optimizing content on platforms by target market or demographic. What's really happening to the delivery of the advertiser's message? As people who produce content and deliver content, we always have to think about the person who is funding the industry or funding the areas, funding the ideas or funding the broadcasting. My own personal soapbox about using the right measurement sticks, I'll do that very briefly. And then talk about that exponential expansion I mentioned a minute ago, the third and fourth screen, what is already happening right now. So yes, we are a global company. We have grown through acquisition and organically. We now blanket the globe. There are about 1,600 clients working with us. We're approaching 1,000 employees headquartered in the US, but we have an office here in Toronto. We actually are operating in about 43 markets of reporting right now. We come at this world because it's really the only way to do it from the standpoint of let's get a 360-degree view, if we can, of an individual person's behavior. So that goes all the way from what's happening in terms of their web behavior to what's happening in terms of transactions, what's happening from the standpoint of the effectiveness of the advertising, and just try to get a view of exactly how is the consumer moving across these platforms now, which is the reality of the world we're in, and how are they consuming the content that's out there. Our client list is kind of a who's who, depending on whatever sector you want to look at. Here's a smattering of the people that we work with by sector, some pretty big brands there, so enough said about that. We really come at this on 3 basic platforms as a company. One being web analytics, so what I'll call the standard audience measurement, which you're going to see a little bit of. Think of it as ratings for the internet. We have just recently acquired a company called Nedstat out of the Netherlands to get us into the site analytics side of things. So we're going to be measuring sites, the inside the site as well as outside from a panel perspective. We come at that as much as we can from a vertical perspective, so retail versus packaged goods versus travel versus other different sectors, automotive. And then increasingly looking at the social analytics side of things and how is social media actually affecting things. One of the things that we think is also very important to the digital side of the business that we're all in, the online along with the offline, is let's understand how well these campaigns, how effective this whole area is, and how it works with offline. Nothing works in isolation. That is not the world we're all in anymore. Forget about that. It is a new world, and you have to understand across the different platforms. One of the key ones is mobile, and please don't think about this as just a phone. I see more than a few tablets around the room, and if you've been reading anything about the Congress, the mobile Congress in Spain, you know that tablets are the hot item right now, being talked about a lot. So how do you measure mobile, and how do you measure mobile along with online and television and all the other places that content can be exposed, and bring that all together? So that's us. That's how we're trying to tackle it. What does the Canadian landscape look like? Well, last year I told you, and it hasn't changed. This is right up to date to the end of the last year. We are still one of the highest per capita penetrated companies for what I'll call traditional online measurement. It seems funny to say that, but let's call it that for now. It's been around for a while, and heavily engaged. So whether you look at minutes per person reached, or you look at pages, where we're number 3, we are consuming a lot of online content, and certainly in the high group, the top 5 for the countries that we measure, of the 43 that we're actively measuring. We turn to a second here to some other Canadian data. I'm turning now to NADBank and PMB. NADBank measures newspapers in Canada. PMB measures magazines. And go to them to see that, according to them, the internet is Canada's number 3 weekly time spent medium. So a couple of things about this chart I want to point out. One, it is about to be updated to 09. This is actually 08, so it's actually prehistoric in some ways in my time frame. But it's only at that point one share point behind radio, and I would hypothesize that this will change as soon as you see the new data. The internet will move probably to the second spot in terms of minutes consumed in a week by adults 18 plus. But also, I think the thing that's interesting is if you look at the total at the bottom, the actual consumption has gone up. The total number of minutes has actually gone up by some 30 minutes, 31 minutes in a week. And the lines in the corner just simply give a pictorial representation of the weekly consumption of minutes, and you can see they're all flat, but the green one. And I'll let you guess which the green one is. Yes, it is the web. What's interesting, though, and I find this intriguing, having been in the information business for a long time, is yes, the web is growing, but if you look at 4 of the categories that we measure over 100 categories. These are 4 of the big ones: music, newspapers, TV, and radio. And you look at some of the unique visitor counts in those sections by demographic. These are substantive numbers in what I'll call traditional content, traditional media that has moved to online. So I'll go back to the comments at the outset. I think this is a huge opportunity. It's all about understanding these platforms and how to merchandise them. This is, except for a couple of spots on a couple of the, let's call it more mature demographics, and I think I can say that, those numbers are huge. Those are big numbers of unduplicated people going to this content. They're just going to a different channel of distribution to consume it. So let's talk about video on the other screen for a second. If we look at time spent, 2-part chart, time spent streaming video since February of last year, it's grown 16%. The total minutes spent online in that same period has grown 5%. So we're seeing substantive growth for consumption of video in this country versus the overall growth of the web. A chart I showed last year, but I wanted to update it because some of you may not have been here. Video really reaches all major groups, demographic groups online. More than half of the unique viewers, which is what we call them for video, about 53%, are over the age of 35. That's just a little bit slightly younger than the overall internet, if I can call it that. But we certainly know that if we look at high income, or if we look at the younger orientation and the demographics, those are the people, particularly when I point your attention to the 18 to 24s and the 25 to 34s, those are the people that are streaming a lot of videos, and they're also spending a good, considerable more time than on a minutes per viewer basis than some of the other demographics. So let's talk a second about, if that's the reality, how do we optimize these platforms? What is happening right now? And as the slide says, the future is kind of right now. So I'm really happy to be able to share some of this data with you. We did with the Television Bureau. And let me set up the next few slides for you a little bit. So we did a study with them in the fall, as partnered with them, to look at original TV series programming and look at go out to Canadians and ask them how they consumed it. So about 71%, just over 70%, said they consumed on TV only. That was how they consumed it. About a quarter said they did both. They consumed cross-platform, online and on television. And there was a small percentage, 5% or so, that said online only. Still very small, admittedly, but I'm intrigued and was intrigued at the time at the quarter, the 25%, and even, in fact, at the percent that looked at original TV programming online only. When we go a little deeper, though, it gets really even more intriguing, and we were talking about this earlier this morning. If you look at platform viewing by age, in particular the young folks, they are already cutting the cord, and they are becoming harder to reach the traditional way. So the 18 to 24s, which is that top bar, they are cross-platform on about 61% of the responses, and online only was up around 16%, so considerably higher. And even as you move down through some of the other demographics, the cross-platform piece, that light blue color, is fairly big. Not till you get to the more mature ages does the TV only slide over. Probably no big surprise, but the reality, as I said, the future is now. Those people in those younger groups are already setting their habits in terms of how they're going to consume content. The other thing that I think was really interesting, and we saw this when we did this in the US as well, was it's not all about avoiding commercials. So this was a question we asked where we said, answer all that are relevant, but give us the reasons why you would watch shows online, and why would you do that, and what does that really mean? And this speaks to that whole theme that kicked off the morning of opportunity. Opportunity for increased viewing. So we saw comments or responses in the orange bar is the online only. They like to see past episodes. So we see this phenomena of people building up a library of shows and then watching them en masse. They don't subscribe to cable, don't have a TV, small percentage, missed an episode on the TV. So they missed it, but they still want to catch it. So they really are involved in the show, and they want to have an opportunity to see that show. So yeah, there are people that go there for less ads, but interestingly, it isn't that much different between online only and people who are online and TV. The big thing here for me was the opportunities to actually increase the viewing, to complement what's out there. Probably no big surprise here about TV, and this almost sounds like sort of one of those duh comments, that when we ask people about original TV show, how they heard about it, people who were TV only heard about TV shows from TV advertising. That's a big research moment right there. But what was really kind of critical and very interesting to me was the online-only people, which is the orange bar, orange-colored, and the red bar, the people going on both, remember a quarter and then a single percentage, were hearing from family or friends about it, or on the far right-hand side, as you're looking at it, through social media, so Twitter or Facebook. That's how they were hearing about it. So again, extended viewing, opportunities for people to hear about shows other ways. I just threw this in. This was not in the TVB study. It's really a media metrics slide. But lest you think that the Facebook thing is not real or the LinkedIn thing is not real, this is just a quick shot on Facebook, since I just talked about social media. In August of '07, there were about 31 visitors a month 31 visits per visitor a month to Facebook, which is a huge success, obviously, and very strong in Canada. In 2010, in the summer, that had grown to 43 visits a month. So more than once a day, people going into their Facebook, in this case Facebook, or their social media account to talk to friends, send recommendations. Maybe it was talk about a television program that they wanted to pass along some information on.